So we've talked about the land claims, and I guess one of the pieces of that land claims is the Maine Indian Tribal State Commission. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. In reading a lot of stuff around the creation of the land claims, again, it became very clear to everyone that this was very, very complicated. It was getting pressured by elections and a whole host of things. So everybody knew, even the state negotiators in the 2006 work group process at the Maine state legislature said that, this was an organic document. I mean, everybody knew that. So while we don't always agree with the tribal point of view on this, one thing we do agree with is that nobody ever thought this was set in stone. And, that's the mindset the Attorney General's office takes. So what's evidence of that as well is the creation of the Maine Indian Tribal State Commission in statute, which said...
Let me just ask you this. Is that Maine Indian Tribal State Commission a creature of the Federal Act or the State Implementing Act?
I think it's a creature of the Implementing Act.
Okay.
And but it had its roots in the federal process because they were trying to find a third-party dispute mechanism sure. Because they knew, like I said, that a lot would have to be changed. And so the Maine Indian Tribal State Commission was created, and I think a lot of times the mere title of that commission gets people thinking that it's an Indian organization, and but it's a state organization. I mean, they're in tribal, and it's appointed half by the governor and half by the tribes, and the chair is selected through the legislative process. And so the idea of MITSIC, and it's to continuously monitor the social and economic condition of the tribes under the Settlement Act and the state. And when changes and disputes, gray areas take place, that's the forum that's supposed to get used. Anytime there's ever been an issue that's gone there. For example, the Maine Indian Tribal State Commission ruled twice on freedom of access law application to tribes, saying that, FOIA is a law to make governments accountable to their people. Those are tribal governments. They don't govern me. So
Public
the law
doesn't
doesn't
vote in our elections.
Exactly. So, but the state, took us to court on that issue, along with paper companies. I think it was a state court on that one. And so, and that's really been the history, is anytime there's a dispute, then we should get this legally dealt with, because the inability or unwillingness of the state to make any changes to the document is really, I think, very calculated. I think so when we talk about these things, like, it's hard to understand why this little thing that has no effect on their jurisdiction would be a problem with them. I think it's really about keeping this document as interpretively a mess as you can possibly keep it, because...
In their favor, of course.
Yeah, well, it makes for great court arguments because of the ambiguities, and courts by and large tend to be very state right mindset, come from a state rights mindset, and in these issues, the tribe has been really on the bad side of now for 30 years in over a dozen litigation processes.
But the ironic thing is that MITSIC was created to decide these gray area issues.
That's exactly right.
And it wasn't supposed to go to any court. It was supposed to stay within MITSIC, and that would solve the issues one way or the other.
And if you look even in the federal process, you have the Administrative Procedures Act, right, where courts will tell you if you're challenging the EPA, for example, on something, or you're challenging a federal agency, the courts will mandate it back to those administrative processes first. And so we're just kind of waiting for a court to say, you have this mechanism, go work it out, or to give some deference to the decisions that are made, they're good or bad.
But the thing is, any decision, like you said, like the FOIA thing, the legislature paid no attention to it, and there's no teeth in that MITSIC organization to sort of force them to carry through with their recommendations. So, whatever they decide just doesn't get done, and that's the report that was done a while back called At Loggerheads, where they just were stalemated.
And I think what's also interesting is that during the tribal state work group process, this came up a lot. Tribes really were screaming that, look, at the very least, we need to figure out a third-party dispute resolution. You can't always be right. You can't always ask the Attorney General of the state to interpret who's right. It doesn't seem fair. We have in-house legal. I mean, do we get to ask them?
Exactly.
Do we get to get our tribal court to interpret these things? No. So so we need a third. And one of the things that came up in that was a federal district court in D.C. Handling these disputes, and that was a non-starter. I mean, so it just tells you it works great for them. There's no third-party dispute mechanism. There is ambiguity throughout the whole document, and then now you have a 4-decade-old history of court decisions and policy and all of that has people in the mindset that this is just normal. This is the right way to operate.
Totally built a legal wall around us, and from a document that was supposed to be inclusive of all three parties. And and it was like, if you're going to change anything, you can do it with the agreement of both tribe and state. That hasn't.
And that's to me, when I read the document, there's no question. There are some things that were given up there, but when I read it, it's littered with language that really is trying to accomplish finding common ground, forcing people to talk and find common ground. But that hasn't happened. But I think that the state has really just never came to the table in that spirit.
They never had to.
No. And that's the other thing, the political kind of weight the tribes have, and we're getting better at it. But it's really the less political damage for public officials tends to be the direction they go in, and the tribes haven't been able to cause the kind of damage politically to people that don't do the right thing in these areas. So that's been challenging. So we've been trying to build a lot of mechanisms to help us in this argument, not help us just win everything we want, but help us get a seat at the table when these things are happening, and really get listened to, and try to find a way for everyone to roll their sleeves up and find a common ground product. But right now, if you're getting everything, there's no incentive for you to negotiate.
Right. Yeah. So when I think that what we've done right in the past, maybe 5 years or so, is to reach out and to get allies and talk to people and explain what's going on from our perspective, which we haven't really had a chance to do.
No, exactly. I mean, I think it's been extremely uplifting over the past 5 or 6 years to see just the amount of people that have come to the table and said, how can we be helpful? And not just saying it, people have written op-eds and they've written letters. Just last week, the delegation was telling me that they got dozens of support letters in the appeal of the tribe, also on the EPA water quality standards stuff. And, coalitions and partnerships with the Nature Conservancy, for example, with, a whole host of organizations that are supporting tribal issues and or a more cohesive relationship.
You know what? That brings to mind the River Restoration Project, which was huge.
And it's an example, really, of what can be done. And we talked about this. I was going to raise this. Is that we had the Howland bypass ceremony the other day.
Yeah, so
almost 300 people there, and from all walks of life. And I remember town of Howland officials were there, and this was a very contentious project at first. With they wanted to keep their dam, and they wanted the impoundment, and they wanted, and there was a lot of concern. But people found a way to fix it. You can keep your dam.
If you'd have taken the tribal attorneys and the attorneys from Howland or whatever, we'd still be fighting over that.
Probably.